Hi guys, it's Anne here, and today's video is just like a little chit-chatty blast from the past type video. I really wanted to do this actually last year. I've thought about doing this multiple times, but we're here finally now doing this video. I thought it would be fun to look at what was popular in the YouTube beauty space 5 years ago. So 5 years ago, summer 2015, what the heck was going on? I was just really curious to see what that YouTube space was like compared to what's going on today. I mean, knowing that what's going on today is like a totally different world. So I tried to look at some YouTubers that I watched at that time. So 2015 is an interesting year, and summer 2015 is an interesting time for me to pick because that's essentially when I started watching beauty YouTube videos. I know videos have been out for a while before that, but I was actually going to my cousin's wedding and I was looking for makeup looks, and basically one thing leads to another, and then here we are today in the YouTube beauty community space. And you know, I decided to start a channel 2 years ago. So I looked at some people that I have looked like that I watched then, some people that I watched then and now, and a couple people that I didn't really watch. I knew about them, but I don't think I really watched them all that much, and I watch them a bit more now. And there was a few people like, it was like, where do I draw the line? And I realized like the list of people that I've picked to look at was pretty homogenous in terms of the way they look, in terms of style, in terms of video style, I think, for the most part. So I'd be interesting to know, like, after you see who I talk about and what I talk about, is there other YouTubers from that era that I should go check out some of their older videos and see what they were saying at that time? One of the reasons why I really wanted to do this was to see if there was really a clear picture of releases that had happened between, like, so I looked at the months June, July, and August of 2015 for these people, and I feel like sometimes now you can really tell when a product is being released because it feels like every person you watch talks about that product within that month, and then you never hear about it again. Some of them you might still hear that product again in the future, but for the most part it's like it's there and it's forgotten. And I think maybe not so much now, but I feel like maybe the past year to 2 years we really saw that, especially with like an increase in PR packages. And I think now a lot of YouTubers have kind of said no to PR packages, so we're seeing maybe a different trend. But anyway, one of the surprising things that I found at that time was there wasn't a whole lot. Like, it wasn't obvious. There was only a few things. So let me give you the list of people I looked at. I looked at Kathleen Lights, I looked at Tati, I looked at Emily Noel, Casey Holmes, Jessica Braun, Samantha Jane, which a lot of people might not be familiar with. She's a Canadian YouTuber, and Tarababyz. So there was a couple other people that I kind of was poking in around, like Carli Bybel was one of the first people that I had found on YouTube because I found one of her tutorials. That's what I was looking for. But she didn't really have like favorites videos. So that's what I was particularly looking at, was like June, July, August favorites or summer favorites of 2015. So I really only found 3 types of products that were popular, and then one theme trend that was happening at that time. So the biggest item that came out was on, I think it's June 30th, 2015, was the Becca Jacyln Hill Champagne Pop. So Jacyln Hill has gone through a whole lot since then, but that product was definitely had been released. And it was interesting, not every YouTuber talked about it, whereas I think now when you see a release like that, every YouTuber seems to talk about it. But at that time, only a handful, like I'd say half of them had mentioned the product and half didn't. So I found that really interesting, and especially like in favorites videos, because how many people had said, oh, that's their favorite highlighter now, when you think about that being a sort of a cult classic, I guess. And yeah, it's just interesting that that was sort of a big thing at that point. But again, I didn't watch other YouTube channels. Like, maybe there's a realm of people that would be highlighted more in, and I never, no pun intended, because it's a highlighter, and I just didn't come across in these videos. The other thing that was released at that time was the Urban Decay Naked Smoky. Again, not a big splash, but I don't think that's a big surprise to anybody, that it was kind of like a meh kind of palette. It's definitely, you'd have to be into that kind of a look to want that palette, and I don't think it was super unique. And then the third sort of product line was the Too Faced Love Flush collection. So the Love Flush blushes and the little hearts, and then the eyeshadow palette with like the little hearts in the middle, which I didn't think that was that product feels like a weird, like, it feels like it was so long ago, yet I didn't think it was that long ago. I don't know, because I still see it pop up every once in a while in either a favorites, or I see it in like beauty exchanges, like people selling their Love Flush palettes, and I'm pretty sure I've seen it in Winners or Marshalls like within the last year as well. So just interesting. And then the only other, like, the technique that was very popular or that was trending at the time was strobing. So I thought that was kind of funny that that one came up. So popular products that were talked about at that time, it was really hard to come across. Like, the interesting thing was everybody talked about different products. There were a few brands that came up, I feel like, that sometimes come up now. So MAC came up quite a bit, which I don't feel like people really talk about MAC anymore. NYX came up quite a bit, which again, I don't feel like people really talk about anymore. Morphe was like, you could tell the people that had the Morphe codes or that were kind of on that cusp of the Morphe world. Laura Gellar. So a lot of people talked about Laura Gellar as well, which I found interesting because it's not really talked about now. And then the other brand that I feel like is kind of made it all the way across is e.l.f. So e.l.f. was talked a lot then, and it's still talked about a lot now. The other brands, I felt it was interesting that, like, ColourPop had been released, so a couple people had talked about ColourPop, a product here or there, but it didn't really feel as sort of overwhelming as a brand as it does now, because they just release so much crap. Not crap, it's good stuff, but they just release a lot. Other things that I want to mention. So Kathleen Lights talked about a product called Nail Tech Intensive Therapy. It looks like you can still buy this. It's supposed to be for soft peeling nails, which I have, and I was like, I think I might order this. I can get it off Amazon, I think, so I might order this because my nails, like, I've actually kind of dialed back using nail polish a little bit, and they're getting worse. I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but they're peeling like further down. It's like I've cut my nails right down. It's like, 5-year-old product, but that sounds like something I really want to try. L'Oreal, there was a number of L'Oreal products mentioned here and there, which I thought was interesting. So a couple other things that were talked about as favorites in multiple people's videos was the Too Faced Born This Way foundation. So a couple of people had mentioned that. And that's definitely a foundation I've never tried, but it's always been on my list to try. I want to try that and the concealer. And then there was also the Wet n Wild Mega Last lipstick in 903 Just Peachy. I don't know if you can still get this, but a couple of people also mentioned this as a favorite. That was the thing I found really interesting. When I looked at everybody's favorites, there was not a lot of overlap. So everybody had really different favorites, which I thought was really interesting. I haven't, really done a close look at people's favorites, last year or this year to see, is it still that broad? The one thing I did feel, though, looking at everybody's video, that drugstore brands were talked about more. Like, there was definitely a heavier weight on drugstore brands than I think now. Although I say that, but I feel like, and maybe this is because of pandemic, that in the last few months there's been sort of a resurgence of drugstore, which makes sense if you know anything about what's called, like, I think it's called the lipstick theory or the lipstick trend. It's basically like, even when things are hard, lipsticks will still be sold because they're cheap and affordable, like $5 lipsticks. I'll have to look up what the actual thing is, but basically I think people are shifting to looking at more affordable products because a lot of people are out of work right now or limited work, and we all have budgets. So it's very interesting to see. I feel like there's been a slight resurgence, a slight shift away from some of the mid-tier stuff and looking at drugstore. Maybe that's just me. Another brand that came up that I haven't heard talk about in a while was called Gorgeous Cosmetics. I don't know if they're still around, but they were mentioned in Jessica Braun's favorites. Another name that came up a couple of times was Vegas Nay. So I think the Vegas Nay, what would that been? Too Faced was released sometime in 2015, because Vegas Nay popped up a couple of times. Yeah, and it was just really interesting to watch some people's videos. Like, for example, Kathleen Lights video, like if you looked at her video then and you look at her video now, I haven't really watched her actually in the last few months, but I feel like it was the same. Like, you wouldn't have known it was 2015. I would say almost everybody was very similar. Casey Holmes maybe was a bit, again, younger looking. I remember when she used to sit in that corner with the blinds behind her and the makeup in the corner, and she's definitely shifted like her space since then. Everybody pretty much looked the same. The only one I would say was maybe the biggest difference was Tati. I feel like where she filmed, and I think her camera has definitely really changed. And again, everybody accuses her of using filters, which I'm pretty sure she uses filters, because yeah, the quality of her filming now, or at least again, I don't really watch her lately, but from what I can remember in the past few months, the camera quality, she obviously has her big beauty room, so like I feel like her production quality changed the most, and it had improved the most, whereas everybody else felt very, very similar. The one person I want to talk about too that was really interesting was Tarababyz. So she was doing her current beauty favorites for 2015, and I'm pretty sure some of these products are still her favorites, which I thought was really cool, because it just shows when she finds a favorite product, she sticks with it. And I mean, she's an interesting, could be potentially polarizing YouTuber because she buys a lot of stuff, and you know, I don't really condone that, but it is very interesting to see what she buys and what she's interested in, and yet there are still some products that she sticks to. So one was the Wet n Wild Reserve Your Cabana. I'm pretty sure that's like the two-sided highlight and bronzer. She still uses that, and she talked about that in that video. She talked about the House of Lashes iconic lashes, which I'm pretty sure she used for a long time anyway. She talked about the Guerlain Meteorites, which she still talks about, and she talked about the CoverGirl, the Supersizer, which again I think is something she still uses on and off. So yeah, it was just interesting to see how she still used some of the same products. She also has changed a little bit. I'm pretty sure she's had her lips done since 2015, but other than that, like, I mean, she's still in the same space, and like her setup is still fairly similar. So other than that, like, it's all the same. So I just find that really interesting how, and maybe these are just because they're the people that I looked at how consistent their filming is and how consistent their style is, because I mean, I've only been doing this for 2 years, and my first videos are real bad. But again, maybe some of them, like I know Emily Noel, she's been on YouTube since like 2010, so I'm sure if I went back to her very beginning videos, it would be kind of like my very beginning videos, like production quality maybe not the best. But yeah, I just found that really interesting that for most of these YouTubers, you wouldn't know, other than based by the products, because some of the products you know are not new anymore, they still like are the same. And I kind of like that. Like, I think that's why I still watch some of these YouTubers, because to me it shows, okay, maybe they don't change a whole lot. I mean, they still change, everybody changes, and it's good to change, but the fact that they're still very true to who they are just kind of shows their sort of authenticity, I think. Whereas I think some YouTubers have changed quite a bit. And again, sometimes you just do change quite a bit. You kind of go through a phase of like who you were then is just not who you are now. But yeah, I thought the one thing I was really, to be honest, the one thing I was hoping for was like a list of 5 to 10 products that everybody talked about, and that didn't happen. There was definitely not a consistent list of products, and not even a consistent list of brands that people talked about, which I found just very interesting. So yeah, is there anybody that you've gone back to and watched some of their older videos? I think it's kind of fun. I think it's fun to kind of go back and see what people were talking about then. I think maybe people were not sort of on the trend. Like, I feel like there was not quite so many releases happening at that time, and I feel like that's something that's changed in the beauty community. I feel like there's just an overwhelming amount of releases. It probably depends on the brands you follow as well, because I feel like that was always a trend with high-end brands. Like, high-end brands always had like seasonal releases because it kind of aligned with like fashion releases, whereas I think like mid-tier and like drugstore, you kind of had maybe 1 to 2 releases a year. Like, you had like the spring refresh, and then you maybe had like a specific collection. I don't know, that's just kind of my perception. I could be totally wrong on that. Anyway, I'm just curious to know, like, what were you using 5 years ago? I feel like for me, that was the first time like I'd really just started getting into Sephora. I was still using a lot of drugstore makeup. I didn't really have any mid-tier to high-end palettes that I do now, and I think I still had a lot of makeup then. Like, I've always been into makeup, but I feel like there's definitely been like a slightly exponential curve for me since 2015 in terms of the number of products that I have and sort of my engagement into the YouTube beauty community. I've definitely become, well, obviously I have a channel now. Yeah, there's just so much more than there even was 5 years ago. I'm just curious to know what your impressions are. Is there anybody that I should go back and watch some of their 2015 videos to see what was trending and what products they were using? I'd love to go back. I was gonna go back further and do 2010, but I didn't know who to pick. I'm pretty sure Emily Noel is online at that point, but I wasn't sure who else to pick. I think what I'm gonna do, I think the next sort of blast from the past that I want to look at is Christmas 2015. I'm really curious to know what was the holiday releases at that time. I'm curious, particularly like Too Faced, because I feel like Too Faced had a good run there of like really interesting Christmas holiday releases, and I don't know what other brands were doing. Again, I was still pretty new to like the Sephora mid-tier range stuff at that point, so be interesting to kind of look back and be like, oh yeah, that was what was released then. I hope you liked this video. If you did, feel free to give it a little thumbs up down below. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my tiny little channel here in Toronto, Canada. I hope you're doing well, and I'll see you sometime soon. Bye.